Hey there, welcome to Quick Laugh Hub. I'm so glad you found us today. Go ahead, get comfortable. Grab your coffee, your tea, maybe a little something sweet. Let those ocean waves wash over you. And let me do one thing, make you smile. Today I've put together a full collection of the best jokes we have. And I mean the best. The ones our viewers keep sharing with their friends, their kids, their neighbors. The ones that made you hit that like button. Here's what we've got. We're starting with the all-time fan favorites, our most watched jokes, the ones that went viral right here on Quick Laugh Hub. Then we move into marriage and family, because 50 years of marriage gives you a lot of material. After that, Little Johnny. You know Little Johnny. Everyone knows Little Johnny. Then we visit the doctor, the church, the grandkids, and finally the golden years with all the beautiful chaos they bring. This is Quick Laugh Hub. Let's laugh together. All right, let's start with the good stuff. These are real jokes from our channel. The ones you watched, liked, and sent to someone at 2 in the morning with the message. You have to see this. I love every single one of these. Let's go. Number 1, the mop. Little Johnny came home from school. "Dad," he said, "the teacher asked us, what gets wetter the harder you work it? And every man thinks he's an expert at doing it." Dad cracked his knuckles confidently. "I know this one. It's a mop, Dad." Dad unclenched his fists. "That's what I said." "You said nothing, Dad. You just made a face." "Oh, Dad, we've all been that dad." Number 2, the note. Little Johnny's teacher sent a note home. It read, "Please explain to your son that do it all night till it's raw is not an appropriate description of baking bread." Dad read it twice, then looked at Mom. "He's not wrong, though." Mom stared at him. "You're exactly why Johnny is failing." "Dad, buddy, you are not helping, not one bit." Number 3, the blonde hair. A husband comes home and finds his wife crying. He asks, "Honey, what's wrong?" She sobs, "I was doing the laundry and I found a blonde hair on your jacket." He thinks fast. "Remember last week when I took your mother to lunch?" She sniffles, "Yes. She was sitting next to me in the car." She wipes her tears. "Oh, okay, sorry I overreacted." The next day, she calls him at work. "Honey, I found Mom's wig in the back seat." He was moving so fast, so incredibly fast. Number 4, would you remarry? A woman asks her husband, "If I drowned, would you jump in to save me?" "Of course." "And if I died, would you remarry?" "Well, probably eventually." "And would she wear my clothes?" "Why buy new ones?" The next day, the man woke up in the bathroom, locked in. "Why buy new ones, sir? What were you thinking?" Number 5, shoplifting. A 7-year-old boy raised his hand during class and told his substitute teacher, "My uncle got caught doing it in a changing room at the mall last Saturday, and security threw him out." The substitute went pale. She quietly asked everyone else to do silent reading. She pulled the boy aside and asked him to explain carefully. He sighed. "Shoplifting. He put a jacket over his shoulders without paying and walked around. Security said that counts. Mom says he's an idiot." The substitute teacher aged 10 years in that moment. 10 years. Those are your favorites, folks. And I have to be honest, they're my favorites too, every single time. Now let's keep going. because we've got a lot more where that came from. Marriage jokes are up next, and if you've been married for more than a week, you'll recognize every single one. Marriage, the beautiful, chaotic, wonderful adventure of sharing your life with someone who somehow manages to surprise you every single day, usually right when you think you've finally figured them out. These are some of our absolute best marriage jokes. If any of these hit a little too close to home, that just means you're doing it right. A man and his wife were arguing about who should make the morning coffee. After a long back and forth, the wife said, "Fine, you do it." He grumbled, "But why should I always make it?" She said, "Because it says so in the Bible." He grabbed the Bible, flipped through every page and said, "Where does it say that?" She pointed to the cover. Hebrews. She had that one ready. She had it ready for years. My wife asked me to hand her the lipstick. I accidentally handed her the glue stick. She still isn't talking to me. On the bright side, she really can't. A man goes to the doctor and says, "I think my wife is losing her hearing." The doctor says, "Stand 40 feet away and speak to her normally. See if she hears you." The man goes home, stands at the end of the hallway. "Honey, what's for dinner?" "Nothing." He moves to 20 feet. "Honey, what's for dinner?" Still nothing. He walks right up behind her. "Honey, what's for dinner?" She spins around, for the third time, "Chicken." The hearing was fine. It was always fine. My wife said she wanted to feel special on her birthday. So I told her she was 1 in a million. She cried. I didn't mean it that way, but the math does check out. Math is not romance, I know that now. A couple celebrating their 50th anniversary were asked the secret to their long marriage. The husband said, "We take time twice a week for a romantic dinner. Candlelight, a little wine, soft music." "That's so sweet, you go together." She goes Tuesday, I go Fridays. 50 years, separate reservation nights, that's the secret. My wife told me I had to stop acting like a flamingo. I had to put my foot down. Just one foot, though. A husband was reading the newspaper when his wife hit him over the head with a frying pan. "What was that for?" "That's for the piece of paper in your pocket with Mary Lou written on it." "Sweetheart, that was the name of a horse I bet on last week." She seemed satisfied. She left the room. 2 days later, clang. "Now what?" "Your horse called." "Oh no, oh no, no, no." My wife said if I don't get off the computer, she'll slam my head on the keyboard. But I think she's jockin' for. I may have been wrong. I told my wife she was drawing her eyebrows too high. She looked surprised. She always looks surprised now, every morning. My wife and I have a deal. I don't try to run her life, and I don't try to run mine. It's a very efficient system. My wife asked me to go to the store and get a gallon of milk. She said, "And if they have eggs, get a dozen." I came home with 12 gallons of milk. They had eggs. I followed the instructions exactly. My wife just texted me, "What does IDKLY and TTYL mean?" I replied, "I don't know. Love you, talk to you later." She replied, "Okay, I'll ask someone else." She never did figure it out. A man called his friend and said, "Help me. My wife just ran off with my best friend." His friend asked, "Who was your best friend?" I don't know yet, but he's got my wife. Silver lining. He gets a new best friend and peace and quiet. My wife and I always laugh at how competitive we are. But I laugh more. I'm also faster and funnier, she'll agree eventually. A man was on his deathbed. He held up a jar nearly full of beans. Every time I did something wrong, he said, you put a bean in this jar. I'm not upset. I just want to know, what is that large gold nugget at the bottom? She smiled. Oh, that was the first time you really made me angry. I didn't have any beans yet. She planned this from day one. Day one. My wife says I never listened to her. Or something like that. I'm almost certain that's what she said. A couple was in the car on the way to church. The wife said, I think I feel a little sermon coming on. The husband thought she said, a little sore one coming on, and said, that's what you get for sitting on cold bleachers at the game. She gave him a look that lasted the entire service. There is no recovering from that look. None. A husband tells his wife, I was a fool when I married you. She replied, I know, but I was so infatuated at the time I didn't notice. She noticed. She just filed it away for later. My wife told me I needed to grow up. I was speechless. It's really hard to talk with 23 gummy bears in your mouth. 23 is the perfect number, by the way, scientifically proven. My wife and I were discussing what to do if one of us passed away first. I said I'd probably move to Hawaii. She said she'd move in with her sister. I said, good, then she can have the apartment. Marriage is about planning ahead. A couple decided to take a second honeymoon for their 40th anniversary. Same hotel, same room. The husband said, this is incredible, nothing has changed. The wife said, everything has changed. He said, what do you mean? Same hotel, same room. She said, 40 years ago I looked at these walls and thought I was with the most wonderful man in the world. He smiled, and now. She looked at the walls. These walls are the same. She really made him work for that one. My wife told me, I dreamed you gave me $100 for shopping. I said, here's 20. Go back to sleep and finish your dream. Efficient, romantic, perfect. A couple was watching TV. The wife said, I think the neighbors are having a fight. Martha told me she's going to leave her husband if he doesn't stop spending all his free time fishing. The husband said, that's terrible. Yes, she agreed, all that money on fishing gear. He thought for a moment. No, I meant about her leaving. She looked at him. Fishing season just started, didn't it? He wasn't even trying to hide it. My wife and I have been married for so long that we finish each other's sentences. It drives me absolutely crazy, she said. See, she does it every time, every time. A man called his doctor and said, my wife just swallowed a pen. What should I do? The doctor said, stay calm, I'll be there in 10 minutes. What do I do until then? Use a pencil. Very practical man, that doctor. My wife asked me what I wanted for my birthday. I said nothing would make me happier than a new watch. So she got me nothing. She listened perfectly. I have no complaints. A husband tells his wife, you know, when I die, you should get remarried. Why would you say that? I just want you to be happy. That's very sweet, maybe I would. Well, just not anyone from my golf club. He said it so casually, so casually. My wife and I were arguing about money. She said, if you were any kind of a man, you'd buy me something with a diamond in it. I bought her a deck of cards. Technically correct is the best kind of correct. I asked my wife, where do you want to go for our anniversary? She said, somewhere I've never been. I said, how about the kitchen? I can confirm, the couch is quite comfortable. Very comfortable actually, great couch. A man comes home to find his wife throwing his belongings out the window. What's going on? He yells. She shouts, I found out you're a gambler. He looks up and says, honey, let's not do anything rash. I bet I can explain everything. Even then he couldn't help himself. A woman tells her husband, I think our neighbor's wife is a lot smarter than you. What makes you say that? She convinced her husband to tile the entire bathroom himself. She only paid for the tiles. He thought about it. That is pretty smart. How do I know? She said. I've been watching him do our bathroom since Tuesday. She played the long game, the very long game. My wife asked me to describe her in one word. I said beautiful. She blushed, really? No, that was a different word. The one I was thinking of rhymes with stubborn. I have fast reflexes now, very fast. A man walks into the house covered in mud. His wife says, take those muddy boots off before you come in. He looks down. I'm not wearing boots. He said it so quietly, so sad. My wife said she wanted to feel appreciated. So I told her, I don't know what I'd do without her. She smiled. What would you do? I said, less laundry probably. I'm still apologizing for that one. My wife and I decided to make a list of the top 10 things we love about each other. She finished her list in 10 minutes. I'm still working on mine. Not because I can't think of things. I'm just very thorough. Very thorough, that's all. A man came home and found his wife standing in the kitchen crying. What happened? He asked. I burned dinner again, she sobbed. He put his arm around her. Don't worry, honey, we can order pizza. She cried harder. That's what you said the last 4 times too. He ordered the pizza. My wife told me our cat was jealous of me. I said, why would the cat be jealous of me? She said, because I talk to you more. I had no response to that. A wife said to her husband, can you go to the store and buy a loaf of bread? And if they have eggs, get 12. He came back with 12 loaves of bread. They had eggs, he said. She has started writing very detailed lists. My wife sent me outside to get some fresh air. 2 hours later, she came looking for me. I was sitting in the car in the driveway. She asked why. I said, this is as fresh as I get. She went back inside. My wife asked me why I speak so softly in the house. I said, I'm afraid Mark Zuckerberg is listening. She laughed. I laughed. Alexa laughed. We all laughed. A husband forgets his anniversary. His wife is furious. She says, tomorrow there had better be something in the driveway that goes from 0 to 200 in 6 seconds. The next morning she looks outside. There is a bathroom scale in the driveway. He has not been seen since. My wife told me I'm immature and need to grow up. I said, oh yeah, well you can't come to my fort. She is no longer allowed in the fort. A husband and wife had a big argument. She said, "I want you to know that I've decided to see a therapist." He said, "Good. Maybe she can talk some sense into you." He slept on the couch for a week. My wife and I have the perfect compromise on the thermostat. I set it where I want it. She changes it. I change it back. It's called communication. That wraps up our marriage section. Take a breath. Let those waves roll in for a moment. Because little Johnny is up next, and that boy has things to say. Little Johnny. Now there is a boy. He's the kid in every classroom who raises his hand at exactly the wrong moment, whose answers are somehow, impossibly, technically correct, whose teacher needs a very long nap after every school day. Let's visit the classroom. The teacher asked the class, "Can anyone use the word beautiful twice in the same sentence?" Little Susie said, "My mom is beautiful, and I want to be beautiful just like her." Lovely Susie. Johnny raised his hand. The teacher hesitated, then nodded. "Last night, my dad looked at my sister's new boyfriend and said, 'Beautiful, just beautiful.'" Dad was not paying a compliment. The teacher said, "If I have 5 apples and give you 3, how many do I have left?" Johnny said, "I don't know. How many did you start with before someone already took some?" He was not wrong. He was not wrong at all. "Johnny, where is the English channel?" "I don't know, ma'am. We don't get cable." Completely reasonable answer. Completely reasonable. If you had 12 cookies and I asked for 6, how many would you have? 12. Johnny, you don't know your math. You don't know my cookies. Those cookies are not leaving his hands. Non-negotiable. The teacher told the class to write an essay on what they do with $1 million. Every student wrote several pages. Except Johnny. He handed in one sheet with 3 words. "Nothing, it's hypothetical." Honestly, that's the most honest answer in the room. What is a comet, Johnny? A star with a tail. Good, can you give me an example? Lassie. He connected the dots, his dots, but still dots. Johnny came home from school, very excited. "Mom, we learned how bobbies are made today." His mother panicked. "Really? What did they tell you?" "God plants a seed in a garden." She relaxed. "Yes, that's right." And then the stork brings the wrong one, and everyone's confused. The stork has a lot to answer for, apparently. What would you do if you found $1 million? "I'd give it to charity," said one student. "I'd give it to the poor," said another. Johnny said, "I'd try to find the person who lost it, and if they were rich, I'd keep it." That's not generosity. That's a sliding scale. "Johnny, where do you think you're going?" "Home." "School isn't over." "It is for me. I didn't come in until noon." "But you still have 3 hours left." Johnny checked his watch. Actually 2:45. He was tracking every minute, every minute. The teacher asked everyone what their fathers did for work. "Baker, firefighter." "My dad plays piano at a bar," said Johnny. "And what does your mother think about that?" She says, "Thank God he's not a doctor." I need to know more about this family, so much more. "Johnny, can you tell me how we get honey?" "Bees make it from flowers." "Very good. And where does milk come from?" "From the store, ma'am." Accurate, completely accurate. Johnny was late to school. Why are you late? I was throwing stones in the puddles out front. 5 minutes later, another student walked in, completely soaking wet. Why are you wet? Someone was throwing stones in the puddles. From the back of the room, very quietly. My name is Puddles. He named the puddle. He named the puddle. The math teacher said, if you have $10 and ask your father for 10 more, how much do you have? $10. Johnny, you don't know your math. You don't know my father. Dad has a very clear policy on this. Very clear. Johnny was drawing in class. The teacher came over. What are you drawing, Johnny? God. But nobody knows what God looks like. He didn't look up. They will in a minute. That's confidence. Pure, uncut confidence. Johnny, if I lay one egg here and one egg there, how many eggs do I have? Johnny stared at the teacher for a long moment. I don't think you can do it. He had serious doubts. Johnny asked his teacher, can you get in trouble for something you haven't done? No, of course not. Good, I haven't done my homework. He studied her well. The substitute teacher walked in and saw a note from the regular teacher on the board. It said, be careful, Johnny knows more than you do. She laughed. By lunchtime, she was not laughing. Nobody who ignores that note has ever been okay. The teacher was asking students what they wanted to be when they grew up. A doctor, a teacher. Rich, said Johnny. That's not a profession. It worked for my uncle. Johnny is going into business. I have no doubts. Johnny, what do you call a person who keeps talking when people are no longer interested? He answered immediately. A teacher. She asked. Johnny's teacher wrote in his report card, Johnny shows great potential, if only he would use it. His father wrote back, I feel the same way about his teacher. The apple did not fall far, not even a little. Johnny spelled wrong. W-R-O-N-G. Good, now use it in a sentence. Johnny thought for exactly 2 seconds. The teacher was wrong about me. Personal, direct, documented. Johnny, you missed school yesterday, didn't you? Not even a little bit. Honesty is a virtue. The teacher said, today we'll play word association. I say a word, you say the first thing that comes to mind. Dog, cat. Tree, a leaf. A house. Mortgage, said Johnny. The teacher blinked. Where did you learn that word? Every Sunday at the dinner table, he said, sadly. That poor kid hears everything. The teacher asked everyone what their favorite animal was. Puppy, bunny, kitten. Johnny said fried chicken. That's not an animal, the teacher said. It was, said Johnny. Technically a life cycle, technically. Johnny told the teacher, my dad says we come from monkeys. Your father and I come from different places. Johnny nodded very slowly. That explains a lot. He connected those dots so fast. Johnny came home devastated. Mom, I failed every subject. His mother said, how? You said you studied. He said, I did, but the test was about stuff the teacher taught. A fundamental disconnect in expectations. Can you give me a sentence with the word politics in it, Johnny? He thought for a moment. My parrot swallowed a clock. That doesn't have the word politics. Sure it does, politics. He waited all week to use that one. All week. At the end of the school year, the teacher said, "You've been a real challenge, Johnny, but I'm going to miss you." Johnny smiled. "I'll aim better next year." He's been planning that response since September. The class was learning about the human body. "Johnny, can you name a part of the body that starts with the letter N?" "Knee," he said. "Good, now one that starts with T." "Two knees." You can't argue with the logic. You really can't. Johnny was asked to write a poem about school. He wrote, "Roses are red, violets are blue, school starts at 8, I'll be there at 2. A poem and a schedule, multi-talented boy. The teacher asked Johnny to use the word fascinate in a sentence. Johnny thought for a moment. My sister bought a new sweater with 10 buttons, but her chest was so big she could only fasten 8. The teacher moved on immediately. Johnny's mother got a call from his teacher. "Mrs. Johnson, Johnny told the class today that he has a pet reindeer named Blitzen." His mother sighed. "What did I tell you about lying?" "Not to do it unless it makes people happy." His mother thought about it. "Is fair enough." The teacher asked the class, "Who can tell me what the word coincidence means?" Johnny raised his hand. "My mom and dad are having coincidence for dinner tonight." "You mean quiche." "I know what I heard." Little Johnny fell asleep in class. The teacher called on him. "Johnny, if there are 3 ducks sitting on a fence and you shoot one, how many are left?" Johnny woke up. "None." "Why none?" "Because the other 2 flew away when they heard the shot." The teacher stared. "That is actually correct, but let me ask you a question. If 3 women are eating ice cream, one is licking it, one is biting it, one is sucking it, which one is married?" Johnny thought carefully. "The one who's biting it, because married women bite." The teacher turned very red. "I was going to say the one holding the cone." Johnny smiled. "I know what you were thinking, though." Little Johnny, everybody. The boy, the myth, the legend. One more section before we visit the doctors and the church. Let's check in with the golden years. The golden years. Now I know what they say, and they're right. These really are golden years. But gold is also heavy, stiff, requires maintenance, occasionally sets off the metal detector at the airport. These jokes are for us, for anyone who has earned the right to wake up slowly in the morning. You've earned these laughs, every single one. I finally got 8 hours of sleep last night. It only took 3 naps to do it. Efficiency, that's what it is. My doctor told me I needed to watch my drinking. So now I do it in front of a mirror. I'm following instructions, exactly as given. I asked my doctor how long I have to live. He said 10. 10 what? Months, years. 9, 8, 7. Not the countdown I was expecting. I told my grandson I used to walk 5 miles to school in the snow. He said, "Grandpa, it says here the school was 4 blocks away." I said we had different blocks back then. Very large blocks, historically significant blocks. My memory is so bad I called a helpline for forgetfulness. They put me on hold. I forgot why I called. The system failed us both. I retired last year. I thought I'd be bored. But honestly, I don't even have time to watch everything I want to watch because I fall asleep before the second episode. Retirement is exhausting. The busiest I have ever been, by far. A doctor told an elderly patient, "Sir, you're in incredible shape for your age." I know, I work at it. What's your secret? I get up at 6 every morning, eat a good breakfast. Then I sit very still for the rest of the day and hope nothing hurts. That is a plan, a medically sound plan. My grandson asked me what it was like before the internet. I said quiet, very, very quiet. We had books, we had naps, life was good. At my age, getting lucky means finding a parking spot right next to the entrance. And I feel lucky, genuinely lucky. I went to the pharmacy and said, "Can I have some sleeping pills for my wife?" Why? She keeps waking up. It was an innocent request, completely innocent. My doctor said I need to eat more greens. I said, "Does mint chocolate chip count?" He didn't answer. I'm taking that as a yes. Silence is consent in this case. My grandchildren think I don't understand technology. I just bought something online. It arrives in 5 to 8 business days. That's how long I've got. I'm staying optimistic about the delivery window. I've reached the age where every time I get up from a chair, I make a noise. My knees go crack, my back goes pop, my mouth says, "Oh good Lord." My grandchildren think it's a sound effect. They keep asking me to do it again. I have become an instrument. They say the mind is the first thing to go. I can't remember the second thing, which honestly proves the point. I'm not saying I'm old, but my back goes out more than I do. My back has a much more active social life than me. I'm at the age now where I buy green bananas nervously. Every single time. The secret to a long, healthy life. Every day a good laugh, a long walk and a short nap. I've been working on the nap for 30 years. I'm getting very good at it. Mastery takes time. Mastery takes time. An old man walked into a bank and asked the teller, "Can you help me check my balance?" She said, "Of course, sir." He stood on one foot. "How am I doing?" She had to answer. She really had to answer. A grandmother told her granddaughter, "When I was young, I had to walk uphill both ways to school." Grandma, that's not physically possible. You're right, but by the time you're my age, that's how you'll remember it too. Memory is a creative art form, a beautiful art form. An elderly couple was watching the news. The reporter said, "Scientists say women live longer than men on average." The wife turned to her husband, "I think I know why." "Why?" "We don't have wives." She's been sitting on that one for 40 years. A retired man called his doctor. "Doctor, I feel terrible. What should I do?" "Drink lots of fluids, get rest, and stay off the computer." He covered the phone. "Honey, doctor says no computer." His wife said, "You don't even use the computer." He said, "I know. I just wanted to hear him say it." Medical validation is a powerful thing. A man walks into a library. He says to the librarian, "I'd like a cheeseburger, fries, and a large coffee." She whispers, "Sir, this is a library." He whispers back, "Sorry, I'd like a cheeseburger, fries, and a large coffee." He made the adjustment. He's trying. My wife asked what I wanted to do for our anniversary. I said, let's do what we did on our wedding night, go somewhere fancy, have a wonderful dinner, then come home and watch television until we both fall asleep. She cried. I think they were happy tears. Romance is remembering what works. A man walks into a bar and orders a drink. How old are you? Asks the bartender. I'm 87 years old, he says proudly. Wow, what's your secret to a long life? The man thinks for a moment. Minding my own business. The oldest and most reliable piece of advice. 2 elderly men were sitting on a park bench. One said, I'm 82 years old and I'm full of aches and pains. How do you feel? The other said, I feel just like a newborn baby. Really, like a newborn baby? Yep, no hair, no teeth, and I think I just wet myself. We all get there eventually. An elderly woman called her doctor in a panic. Doctor, my husband just swallowed a pen. What should I do? The doctor said, I'll be there in about an hour. She said, what do I do until then? Use a pencil. Classic doctor advice, timeless. 3 elderly ladies were sitting on a park bench. A man in a trench coat came up and flashed them. The first lady had a stroke. The second lady had a stroke. The third lady's arms were too short to reach. She was the luckiest of the 3. My wife and I went to the county fair. There was a small airplane giving rides for $50. The pilot said, I'll give you both a free ride if you don't scream. We went up. The pilot did loops and dives and spins. Not a sound from us. When we landed, the pilot said, I'm impressed. You're the bravest couple I've ever had. My wife said, well, I almost screamed when Harold fell out. When Harold fell out. She patted my seat. Oh, that's Harold, not my husband. I asked my wife if she ever had a ringing in her ears. She said no, why? I said good, because I signed us up for bell ringing lessons. She asked why. I said for the hearing aid discount at the audiologist. She stared at me for a very long time. At 78 years old, I have discovered the perfect morning routine. Wake up. Check if everything still works. Make coffee. Forget why I went to the kitchen. Make coffee again. It's a good system. My neighbor turned 90 last week. I asked him if he had any regrets. He thought for a very long time. I wish I had eaten more dessert, he said. I wrote that down. I wrote that down immediately. Now we come to a very special section. Doctors and hospitals. Because at a certain age, the doctor becomes your most frequent social engagement. More reliable than the grandkids, more punctual than your friends, and somehow always booked 2 months in advance. These jokes are for every one of us who has spent quality time in a waiting room, flipping through a magazine from 3 years ago. A man walked into a doctor's office. The doctor said, I haven't seen you in a while. The man said, I know I've been sick. Nobody said anything for a moment. A patient says to his doctor, every time I drink a cup of coffee, I get a stabbing pain in my right eye. The doctor says, try taking the spoon out. Very simple fix, very simple. A man goes to the doctor for a checkup. The doctor says, I have bad news and worse news. The man says, give me the worst news first. The doctor says, "You have 24 hours to live." The man says, "That's the worst news. What's the bad news?" The doctor says, "I've been trying to reach you since yesterday." That is a very inconvenient timeline. A man told his doctor, "I think I'm a dog." The doctor said, "How long has this been going on?" The man said, "Since I was a puppy." The doctor pointed to the couch. "Lie down." The man said, "I'm not allowed on the furniture." A patient told his doctor he was having trouble sleeping. The doctor said, "Have you tried counting sheep?" The patient said, "Yes, I counted to 40,000. And then what? Then I had to shear them. Now I have too much wool and no idea where to store it." The doctor prescribed a different approach. An elderly patient told his doctor, "I don't think my hearing aid is working." The doctor said, "Can you describe the symptoms?" The patient said, "Yes, Homer is a big yellow fellow and Marge has blue hair." The doctor adjusted the hearing aid. A man went to see his doctor. The doctor said, "You need to stop masturbating." The man said, "Why?" The doctor said, "Because I'm trying to examine you." Moving on, very quickly moving on. A woman brought her husband to the doctor. She said, "He thinks he's a refrigerator." The doctor said, "That's not so bad. It's a fairly harmless delusion." She said, "Maybe, but he sleeps with his mouth open and the little light keeps me up all night." The doctor made a note. A man went to the doctor and said, "I think I'm addicted to Twitter." The doctor said, "Sorry, I don't follow you." He had to find a new doctor. The doctor told his patient, "I have some bad news and some very bad news." The patient said, "Well, give me the bad news first." The lab results say, "You only have 24 hours to live." The patient was stunned, and the very bad news: "I've been trying to reach you since yesterday." He really needs to check his phone more often. A man walked into the doctor's office and said, "Doctor, I keep thinking I'm a pair of curtains." The doctor said, "Pull yourself together, man." Excellent advice, medically sound. A doctor told a patient, "You're going to need to stop drinking, stop smoking, eat better, and start exercising." The patient said, "What if I want a second opinion?" The doctor said, "Fine, you're also ugly." That was not what he meant. My doctor told me I was fat. I said, "I want a second opinion." He said, "Fine, you're also lazy." I found a new doctor, a much kinder doctor. An elderly man went to the doctor. The doctor said, "I need you to give a urine sample, a stool sample, and a blood sample." The man turned to his wife. What did he say? She shouted, "He needs your underwear." She has been managing his appointments ever since. A man went to his doctor after eating a whole bag of peanuts every day for 3 months. The doctor said, "No wonder you have stomach trouble, a whole bag every day." The man said, "I can't help it, I only eat the chocolate off." The doctor blinked. "So what do you do with the peanuts?" "I give them to the squirrels." The squirrels are very healthy. A patient said, "Doctor, I think I need glasses." The doctor said, "I'll say, this is a hardware store." He got the glasses. He found a different hardware store. A man tells his doctor, "I keep having this dream that I'm a wigwam, then a teepee, then a wigwam, then a teepee again." The doctor says, "I think I know your problem." "What is it?" "You're too tense." 2 tenths, 2 tenths. The doctor was quite pleased with himself. A doctor says to a patient, "I have good news and bad news." The patient says, "Give me the good news." "You have 24 hours to live." "That's the good news. What's the bad news?" "I forgot to call you yesterday." He really should hire a better secretary. The doctor told me I had to stop eating red meat, fried food, sugar, and salt. I said, "Will I live longer?" He said, "Probably not, but it will feel a lot longer." He had a point. And now the church. Because wherever there are people gathered together, there are jokes waiting to happen. And some of the best jokes in the world come from the most peaceful places. These are clean, warm, and entirely appropriate for Sunday afternoon, mostly. A pastor was giving a children's sermon. He asked, "What is small, gray, has a bushy tail, and gathers nuts in the fall?" A little boy raised his hand slowly. "I know the answer is Jesus, but it sure sounds like a squirrel." Smart boy, very smart boy. A preacher was finishing his sermon and said, "All those who want to go to heaven, raise your hand." Every hand went up. All those who want to go to heaven, right now. No hands went up. Not even the preachers. A priest, a rabbi, and a minister walk into a bar. The bartender looks up and says, "What is this, some kind of joke?" It was a very old one. A church was having a potluck supper. One lady brought a beautiful cake with 1 Corinthians 13 written in icing. The pastor looked it up. "And now abideth faith, hope, charity, these 3. But the greatest of these is charity." He smiled. The lady whispered, "I ran out of frosting at Hope." Close enough. A man went to confession. "Father, I'm 82 years old. Last night I was with 2 25-year-old women." The priest said, "When did you last come to confession?" "Never, Father, I'm Jewish." "Then why are you telling me?" "I'm telling everyone." He was very proud of himself. A little girl was drawing in Sunday school. The teacher asked, "What are you drawing?" "God," she said. But nobody knows what God looks like. They will in a minute. That girl grew up to be quite something. A minister parked his car in a no-parking zone. He left a note on the windshield. "I have circled this block 10 times. I have an appointment to keep. Forgive us our trespasses." When he came back, he found a parking ticket and a note from the officer. "I have circled this block for 10 years. If I don't write this ticket, I lose my job. Lead us not into temptation." It was a very theological afternoon. A Sunday school teacher asked her students, "If I sold my house and my car and gave all my money to the church, would I get to heaven?" "No," shouted the children. "If I cleaned the church every day and cooked for the poor and kept the grounds perfectly, would I get to heaven?" "No," shouted the children again. "Then how do I get to heaven?" From the back of the room, a small boy shouted, "You gotta be dead first." Technically correct. A priest was driving along when he was pulled over by a police officer. The officer smelled alcohol and saw an empty wine bottle on the back seat. "Father, have you been drinking?" The priest said, "Only water." The officer sniffed. "Then why do I smell wine?" The priest looked at the bottle, then looked up with wide eyes. "He's done it again." The officer let him go. 3 elderly women were sitting in church. The first one whispered, "This bench is so hard." The second one whispered, "This breeze is so cold." The third one said loudly, "I didn't think I'd like this new hearing aid, but now I love it." Everyone within 4 pews agreed. A pastor asked his congregation, "How many of you have forgiven your enemies?" About half raised their hands. "How about you, Mrs. Jones? You didn't raise your hand." "I don't have any enemies," she said. "That's remarkable. How old are you?" 98. "Could you tell us your secret?" "I outlived every last one of them." That is one approach to forgiveness. A man who had been attending the same church for 50 years was told by a new young minister, "We'd love for you to get more involved." The old man said, "Young man, I've given this church 50 years of service." "Yes, but..." "I've fixed the plumbing, painted the walls, replaced the roof, donated the new pews." "Of course, but..." "And the one Sunday, I came in a little late because of traffic. Who had to go and mention it from the pulpit?" The minister said nothing. "That's what I thought." A child came home from Sunday school and his mother asked, "What did you learn today?" He said, "We learned about when God sent Moses behind enemy lines to rescue the Israelites. Moses had combat engineers build a pontoon bridge. They crossed over and then the Israeli Air Force bombed the bridge." His mother said, "Is that really what your teacher told you?" He said, "Well, not exactly, but if I told it her way, you'd never believe it." Fair point, a very fair point. A bishop was visiting a small church. After the service, he said to a little boy, "Are you the pastor's son?" "No, sir," said the boy. "We just joined 3 weeks ago." The bishop smiled warmly. "Well, what does your father do?" The boy said, "The same thing he always does. He comes here, sits in the front row, and falls asleep." Every church has that person, every single one. A priest gave a sermon that went on for 2 hours. Afterward, a parishioner said, "Father, that was a wonderful sermon." The priest said, "Thank you. I find that the Holy Spirit fills me with so much to say." The parishioner said, "Yes. Next time perhaps ask him to be a little more brief." The priest laughed. Slowly, a rabbi, a priest, and a minister were arguing about which one's congregation was the most faithful. The priest said, "My congregation gives every Sunday without fail." The minister said, "My congregation tithes their entire income." The rabbi said, "My congregation is so devoted, one man came to me and said, 'Rabbi, I've lost every cent I own in the stock market. My house is gone. My car is gone. I have nothing.' And I said, 'And still you believe?' And he said, 'More than ever, Rabbi.'" The others nodded. "And then what happened?" asked the priest. "I had to lend him $20, said the rabbi. That is faith. That is also a good friend. And now, the grandchildren. Because if marriage is chapter 1 and retirement is chapter 2, the grandchildren are the bonus chapter nobody warned you about. The most wonderful, exhausting, hilarious bonus chapter in the world. A grandfather was reading to his granddaughter from a book of fairy tales. He read, and they lived happily ever after. He closed the book. His granddaughter looked up at him. "Grandpa, do we live happily ever after?" He looked at his granddaughter, then looked at his wife across the room. "We're working on it, sweetheart. We're working on it." His wife threw a pillow at him. So that was a no. A grandmother was baking cookies, with her 5-year-old granddaughter. The girl asked, "Grandma, how old are you?" "Sweetheart, you shouldn't ask ladies their age." "Why not?" "Because it's not polite." The girl thought about this. "How much do you weigh?" "That's also something you shouldn't ask." The girl was quiet for a moment. "Did you get a bad report card too?" Grandma needed a moment. A grandfather took his grandson fishing. After an hour of silence, the grandson asked, "Grandpa, do fish like to be caught?" The grandfather thought about it. "Probably not." "Then why do they grab the hook?" The grandfather thought about it some more. "Same reason I grab donuts when I know I shouldn't." The boy nodded slowly. That was the most honest thing he'd ever heard. A grandmother asked her 8-year-old grandson what he wanted to be when he grew up. He said, "A doctor." She said, "That's wonderful. Why a doctor?" He said, "Because I want to be rich and important and have everyone do what I say." She looked at him. "You could also be a grandmother." He thought about it. He still chose doctor. A little girl visited her grandparents for the summer. After 1 week, she called her mother. "Mom, Grandpa keeps calling me by the wrong name." Her mother said, "What does he call you?" "He calls me Sweet Pea and Cupcake and Button." "That sounds sweet. Doesn't it make you feel good?" "Not really," she said. "I think he just forgot my name 3 days ago." He absolutely had. A grandfather was sitting in his recliner when his 5-year-old granddaughter climbed up on his lap. She looked at his wrinkled face very closely. She touched his cheek. "Grandpa," she said, "were you made before or after they invented moisturizer?" He considered his answer carefully. "Before," he said, "just before." A grandmother gave her 2 grandsons each $10. The first one said, "Thank you, Grandma. I'm going to save this for college." She smiled. The second one said, "Thank you, Grandma. I'm going to buy candy and toys and a water balloon set." She smiled at him too. Later she told her daughter, "I love them both equally." Her daughter said, "Which one reminds you of Grandpa?" She didn't even hesitate. "The second one." A grandfather was telling his grandson about the old days. "When I was your age, we walked everywhere." "How far?" "Miles every single day." "Didn't you have cars?" "We had cars, but gas cost money." The boy nodded. "Didn't you have bikes?" "We had bikes." "Then why did you walk?" The grandfather paused. "Because your great-grandmother needed the exercise." He had not thought through his story. A little boy asked his grandfather, "Grandpa, can you make a sound like a frog?" "Why would I do that?" "Because Grandma said that when you croak, we're all going to Disney World." Grandpa made the frog sound, just to see what would happen. A grandmother was telling her granddaughter about her first date with Grandpa. "He was so charming," she said. "He brought flowers, he opened every door, he paid for everything. He was a perfect gentleman." The granddaughter sighed dreamily. What happened to him? The grandmother looked across the room at her husband asleep in the recliner. "He married me." She said it with great affection. "Mostly." A grandfather was helping his 12-year-old grandson with homework. The boy asked, "Grandpa, how do you spell bureaucracy?" The grandfather said, "Why do you ask me? I'm old, look it up." The boy said, "The computer says to ask someone who knows." The grandfather put on his glasses. "It says that." "No, but I thought it might work." It almost did. Two little girls were talking at recess. "My grandma can play piano beautifully," said the first. "My grandma can speak 3 languages," said the second. "My grandma can drive at night with no glasses," said the first. "My grandma can eat a whole pie by herself," said the second. A little boy nearby said, "My grandma can do everything." They asked, "Like what?" "I don't know, but whatever you ask her, she just says, 'I've been through worse.'" That is the most powerful grandma of all. A grandfather was watching cartoons with his 4-year-old granddaughter. She turned to him and said, "Grandpa, you're my best friend." He was so moved he nearly cried. He said, "You're my best friend too, sweetheart." She thought about it. "Even better than your other friends." "I don't really have other friends." She patted his hand. "That's okay, I'll be all of them." She absolutely is. Well, friends, here we are. We've laughed at marriage, at little Johnny, at the golden years, at the doctor's office, at the church pew, and at the grandkids who make it all worthwhile. I hope this whole journey, every joke, every little moment made you smile at least once. That's what Quick Laugh Hub is all about. We believe that laughter is the most powerful thing we have, and that no matter how old we get, the best joke is always the next one. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up right now. It really does help more people find our channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, tap that subscribe button. We have more compilations on the way, more marriage jokes, more little Johnny, more golden years humor, and always, always more ocean. From all of us here at Quick Laugh Hub, thank you for spending your time with us today. Take care of yourself, hug someone you love, tell them a joke, and we'll see you next time. But wait, we're not done yet, because there are a few more jokes that simply couldn't be left out. Let's keep going. We've got more doctors, more grandchildren, more church, and a few surprises along the way. A man went to the doctor for his annual checkup. The doctor said, "I'm afraid I have bad news. You're going to have to stop drinking, stop smoking, lose 40 pounds, and start exercising every day." The man said, "What if I want a second opinion?" The doctor said, "Fine, you're also dressed poorly." A patient told his doctor he felt like he was invisible. The doctor said, "Next." A woman went to the doctor with a strawberry growing on the end of her nose. The doctor said, "I'll give you some cream for that." A man goes to the doctor and says, "Doctor, I think I'm a bridge." The doctor says, "What's come over you?" The man says, 2 cars, a truck, and a bicycle." The doctor started writing very quickly. An elderly man told his doctor he was thinking about getting a second wife. The doctor said, "How old are you?" 87. "And how old would this wife be?" "Around 30. The doctor said, "At your age, that could be fatal." The man smiled. "If she dies, she dies." The doctor needed a moment. A man walked into a doctor's office, wearing nothing but a large piece of cellophane. The doctor looked him up and down and said, "I can clearly see your nuts." And he wasn't wrong. A patient said to his doctor, "I feel like nobody listens to me." The doctor said, "Next." A man went to the doctor and said, "Doctor, I only have 59 seconds to live." The doctor said, "Wait a minute." The man said, "No." A woman told her doctor, "I think I swallowed a clock a year ago." The doctor said, "Why didn't you come to me then?" She said, "I didn't want to alarm anyone." He checked, there was no clock. But he kept listening just in case. A man walked in to see his doctor looking very worried. "Doctor," he said, "I think I'm addicted to reading the dictionary." The doctor thought for a moment. I can see that gives you pause." The man nodded seriously. "It gives me a great deal of words too. A few more from the church pews. Because Sunday never really ends." A minister announced at the end of the service, "I have good news and bad news." The congregation leaned forward. "The good news is, we have enough money to pay for the new building." Everyone cheered. "The bad news is, it's still in your pockets." Nobody cheered. A Sunday school teacher was talking to her class about Noah's Ark. She asked, "How long did it rain?" A small boy said, 40 days and 40 nights. "Very good, and what happened at the end?" Another child said, "Noah sent out a dove." "That's right, and what did the dove bring back?" A little girl in the front row raised her hand. "An olive branch." "Excellent, and what did that mean?" The same little girl said, "I love you very much." The teacher decided to take a short break. A man told his pastor, "I haven't been to church in 30 years." The pastor said, "Welcome back, what brought you today?" The man said, "My wife said I had to." The pastor smiled, "Well, whatever works." A church bulletin contained the following announcements one Sunday. Weight Watchers will meet at 6 p.m. Please use the large double doors at the side entrance. The rosebud on the altar this morning is to announce the birth of David Allen Smith, the sin of Reverend and Mrs. Smith. Potluck supper Sunday at 5 p.m. Prayer and medication to follow. For those of you who have children and don't know it, there is a nursery downstairs. The secretary was asked to proofread more carefully going forward. A woman was seen praying very intensely before a church bingo game. The priest gently said, "My dear, God doesn't answer prayers about bingo." She looked up at him. "Oh, I know, Father. I'm praying that Mrs. Henderson doesn't show up." Totally different prayer, totally different. A new minister was greeting people after the service. He shook the hand of an elderly man who said, "That was a wonderful sermon." The next Sunday, same man, same comment. Third Sunday, same man, same comment. By the fourth Sunday, the minister was curious. "Thank you so much. What was it about this week's sermon in particular?" The old man thought for a moment. "I haven't the faintest idea, but it was wonderful." He comes every week. He always says wonderful, it's a good system. A pastor asked his congregation during the collection, "Does anyone have a problem with money?" 20 hands went up. He said, "Good, then you understand why we need yours." Nobody put their hands back down. More from the grandchildren. Because they say things we didn't know we needed to hear. A grandfather was looking at old photos with his 7-year-old granddaughter. She pointed to a picture of him as a young man. "Who's that, Grandpa?" "That's me, about 40 years ago." She studied it very carefully. "What happened?" He looked at the photo. then looked at his hands. "Time," he said, "just time." She hugged him. He felt a little better. A grandmother was teaching her granddaughter to bake bread. The girl asked, "Grandma, why do you make 2 loaves every time?" "One for us, one for the neighbors." "Which neighbors?" "Whoever needs it most." The girl thought about this. "How do you know who needs it most?" Grandma smiled. You pay attention, you notice." That little girl grew up to be a very good neighbor. The best ones always do. A grandfather was teaching his 10-year-old grandson to play chess. After 3 games, the boy said, "Grandpa, you always win." "That's because I've been playing for 60 years. "That's not fair." "Life isn't always fair, but if you keep playing, someday you'll beat me." The boy studied the board. "How old will I be?" The grandfather smiled. "About my age." The boy looked at the grandfather's hands. "So I'll be winning and won't be able to hold the pieces." The grandfather laughed for a very long time. A little girl asked her grandmother, "Grandma, do you know how to make yourself disappear?" The grandmother said, "No, sweetheart, I don't." "Can you learn?" The grandmother blinked. "Why would you want me to disappear?" The girl said, "So I can find you, like hide and seek." Grandma agreed to learn. She is currently hiding behind the big chair in the living room. A grandfather was driving his grandchildren to the ice cream shop. His 7-year-old grandson asked from the back seat, "Grandpa, how come you always drive so slow?" The grandfather said, "I drive carefully. There's a difference." The boy said, "Daddy drives carefully too, but we still get there." His wife laughed from the passenger seat for the next 10 minutes. He drove the speed limit the entire way. They got there. A grandmother was reading a bedtime story to her 4-year-old granddaughter. She read about a handsome prince who kissed a sleeping princess. The girl interrupted. "Grandma, why did he kiss her?" "Because he loved her." "But she was asleep." "Yes." "So she didn't say it was okay." Grandma closed the book. "You know what? You make a very good point." They talked about it for 20 minutes. It was the best bedtime conversation either of them had ever had. A boy told his grandfather, "When I grow up, I want to be just like you." His grandfather was very moved. "Why is that?" "Because then I can stay home all day, eat whenever I want, and nobody tells me to do chores." Retirement seen through the eyes of a child. It's not wrong. It's really not wrong. A little girl sat on her grandfather's knee and looked at him very seriously. "Grandpa," she said, "how old do you have to be before you know everything?" He thought about it for a long time. "I'll let you know when I get there." She nodded. That's what Grandma says too. Grandma has been saying it for 47 years. And a few more for the golden years. Because we've earned every single one. 2 old friends met at the park after many years apart. "Do you remember Helen?" asked the first. "Of course," said the second. "Did she ever marry that fellow?" "She did, 30 years and they're still together." "That's wonderful, happy." "Mostly, he's a little deaf, she's a little blind." "Doesn't that cause problems?" "Actually, no. He doesn't hear her nagging, she doesn't see what he's doing." They both nodded. "Love," said the first. "Love," agreed the second. A man complained to his doctor, "Everyone ignores me." The doctor said, "Next." The man had heard that one before. An 80-year-old woman was telling her friend about her vacation. "We flew to Paris, saw the Eiffel Tower, ate croissants every morning." "That sounds amazing. Were you tired?" "A little, but the worst part was coming home." "The flight?" "No, unpacking." She sat down in the chair. She was still unpacking. Two retired men were playing golf. One said, "My doctor told me to play golf every day." The other said, "My doctor told me the same thing." They played for a moment in silence. "Do you think we have the same doctor?" asked the first. "I think we have the same wife," said the second. They finished the round without speaking. A man was telling his friend about his new diet. "The doctor put me on this strict regimen. No salt, no sugar, no fat, no alcohol." His friend said, "That sounds terrible. How long do you have to do it?" The man thought for a moment. He said, "The rest of my life." His friend said, "That's not so bad if it works." The man said, "It hasn't started yet. I'm still saying goodbye to things." He was on day 3 of the goodbyes. An elderly woman called the fire department. "Hello, there's a wasp nest outside my window and I'm allergic. Please send someone." The dispatcher said, "Ma'am, that's not really what we do." She said, "You have long ladders, you have protective suits, you have a truck." The dispatcher said, "We fight fires, ma'am." She said, "And I'm telling you, if you don't come help me, there will be one." They sent someone. A retired teacher was asked what she missed about working. She thought for a moment. "Summer's off." Her colleague laughed. "You have every day off now." She said, "Yes, but during the school year I appreciated them." That is a very deep thought. A man turned 80, and his family threw him a surprise party. His daughter said, "Dad, you don't look a day over 60." He said, "I feel every day of 80." She said, "But you look wonderful." He said, "That's because you need glasses." She laughed. He was not joking. But he laughed too. 3 retired men were sitting in a diner. One said, "I wake up every morning at 7 and I spend half an hour in the bathroom." The second said, "I wake up at 6 and I spend 45 minutes trying to get moving." The third said, "I sleep until 9 and I'm in the bathroom by 9:05. The first 2 looked at him with envy. He shook his head. "I can't wake up before 9, and I wish I could." "Why?" "Because I don't go to the bathroom until 10. They all stared at their coffee. An old man sat down at the breakfast table and announced, "Today I am going to live each moment to the fullest." His wife said, "Does that mean you're finally going to fix the gutter?" He said, "I meant spiritually." She said, "The gutter is very much a spiritual matter at this point." He fixed the gutter. He felt spiritually complete afterward. Well, friends, here we are at the very end. We've been through marriages, classrooms, doctors' offices, church pews, and backyard barbecues with the grandkids. We've laughed at each other, at ourselves, at the beautiful absurdity of this life. And I truly hope that somewhere in these jokes, you found a moment that felt like yours. A situation you recognized, a phrase someone said to you once, a feeling you know by heart. Because that's what the best jokes do. They don't just make us laugh. They remind us that we're not alone in any of this, that every marriage has those moments, every family has that person, every doctor's waiting room has that same 3-year-old magazine. We are all in this together, and we might as well laugh. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up right now. It really does help more people find our channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, tap that subscribe button. We have more compilations on the way, more marriage jokes, more Little Johnny, more golden years humor, and always, always more ocean. From all of us here at Quick Laugh Hub, thank you for spending your time with us today. Take care of yourself, hug someone you love, tell them a joke, and we'll see you next time. Actually, before we go, I have a few more jokes that I simply cannot leave out. These are some of my personal favorites. Short, sweet, and just a little bit sneaky. Ready? Here we go. I told my doctor that I hear music all the time. He said, "What kind of music?" I said, "Just a constant hum." He said, "That sounds about right for your age." My wife and I were both born on the same day. Same month, same year. People say, "Oh, how romantic." We say, it's a shared tragedy. We celebrate together and separately. It depends on the year. A man visited his elderly mother. She said, "I've been knitting you a sweater." He said, "That's wonderful, Mom, but you've been knitting it for 3 years. She said, "I keep unraveling it when I make mistakes." He said, "How many mistakes?" She looked at the tiny square of yarn in her lap. "Quite a few." He wore the square as a pocket square. She was very proud. I have a great exercise routine. Every morning I do 10 push-ups. Well, I try. Well, I think about trying. Well, I make a pushing motion while still lying down. It's a process. A man told his wife, "I'm going for a jog." She said, "That's wonderful, how far?" He said, "To the end of the driveway." She said, "And back?" He thought about it. "We'll see how I feel." He made it both ways. He rested for 40 minutes afterward. My granddaughter asked me, "Grandpa, do you have a bucket list?" I said yes, but now it's more of a cup list. She said, "What's the difference?" I said, "About 500 fewer items and much more realistic expectations." She wrote that down. Smart girl. A man said to his friend, "My wife treats me like a god." His friend said, "That's wonderful, how so?" He said, "She ignores my existence most of the time and only talks to me when she needs something." His friend nodded. That is very theological. An old man sat in the park feeding pigeons. A younger man sat down beside him. "I come here every day," said the old man. "Why?" asked the young man. "Because the pigeons don't argue with me. They don't tell me I'm wrong. They just eat what I bring." The young man thought about it. "And your wife?" The old man smiled. "She argues and she eats what I bring." He tossed another handful of seeds. "The pigeons are better company, but the cooking is worse." I went to the eye doctor. She said, "You have quite a few floaters." I said, "I know, I see them all the time." She said, "Are they bothersome?" I said, "Only when I try to read." She said, "What else do you do besides read?" I thought about it. Watch television, but I fall asleep before the floaters bother me. She wrote something down. I think it said retired. My doctor asked me if I ever get dizzy when I stand up quickly. I said only every morning. He said, does it go away? I said eventually. He said, how long does it take? I said, depends on how long I stand there waiting for it to pass. He said, you should sit back down. I said, that's how I got into this mess. An elderly couple was getting ready for bed. The wife said, we've been together for 53 years. The husband said, I know. Do you ever think about what life would be like if we hadn't met? He thought for a long time. Quieter, he said. She laughed so hard she couldn't breathe. He felt very proud of himself. It was the right answer. After 53 years, he had finally learned the right answer. A grandfather was sitting with his 6-year-old grandson. The boy asked, Grandpa, what was the best day of your life? He didn't hesitate. The day you were born. The boy beamed, then looked suspicious. What was the second best day? The grandfather thought carefully. The day your grandmother agreed to marry me. The boy considered this. Why second? The grandfather leaned in. Because the day you were born, nobody expected it to go this well. The boy didn't fully understand, but he hugged his grandfather anyway. And that was enough. I have reached the age where I wake up with 3 new aches and pains every morning. On good days, I already had those 3. On great days, the old ones go away to make room. On perfect days, I just go back to sleep. Those are my favorite days. The secret to growing old gracefully. First, accept that your body has its own schedule now. Second, find things to laugh about every day. Third, surround yourself with people who make you feel like the best version of yourself. And fourth, have a really good recliner. A really, really good recliner. Everything else follows from there. Now that is truly the end. I promise. No more jokes hiding around the corner. Just the ocean, and you, and hopefully a smile on your face. Thank you for staying all the way to the end. Not everyone does that, but you did. And that means the world to us here at Quick Laugh Hub. If you enjoyed this video, and I hope you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share it with someone who could use a good laugh today. Because everybody could use a good laugh today. Every single one of us. Take care of yourself. Take care of the people around you. And whenever life gets heavy, come back here. We'll be waiting. With more jokes, more ocean, and more time for just this. This is Quick Laugh Hub. We'll see you next time.